And Andy, kind of coming to you, I think we've talked about defence and obviously we've about law enforcement and critical national infrastructure. I think those are areas where everyone kind of expects sovereignty and some of that concerning granularity and risk reside. But are you seeing kind of other sectors that are starting to see around that laws that are kind of equally regulated, or are also starting to see requirements around this that perhaps less obvious?
Yeah, I mean, defence is fairly obvious, government's fairly obvious. No, not really. Just all the people that want to support those people.
I'd say Telco.
Telco's next one.
Yeah, Telco, financial services, power. All of those organisations are either hard regulated about how they will utilise IT services and international boundaries, or are soft regulated to manage those risks. Not so much water. I mean, it's not saying that water isn't important, but I haven't seen that being a driving factor per se. Defence industrial base.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe we call that MOD by proxy, but you know, those organisations typically will have specific regulations and controls that are required by the information export control, or whether it's sensitive information because it's to do with the latest whizzy fighter jet.
Yeah.
So things of that sort. That's probably the ones I see.
All the people who've recently been told that they're now part of a critical national infrastructure
Indeed.
framework that now must comply to all those things that everybody thought they were doing earlier, but it's discovered they just weren't.
I think the NIS directive was quite interesting. Once we saw some of that during capability of mechanisms that were outside the traditional areas that we just kind of start to look at and say, actually this affects more parts of your national infrastructure than you might have anticipated. And great, are you kind of seeing any unusual candidates in that space? I mean, I think we wouldn't necessarily expect to kind of see retail unless we see kind of like kind of healthcare or legal or anyone kind of
I think
consider that space.
Yeah, I mean, it's saying. I mean, fundamentally, it's a public sector probably number one, financial service number two, telco number three. If you had to list them, but I do think it's going to spread across all industries. I mean, if you're hosting customer data and there are rules, regulations in that country, whether that's EU-wide or whether it's an in-country regulation that you cannot hold that data outside of a certain jurisdiction or whatever it may be, everyone is going to have to prepare for this moving forward. And I think, you know, again, cybersecurity is another big issue around, you know, where your data is hosted, and that's going to be a big factor into coming back to that brand loyalty. You know, I mean, that, for me, whenever I speak to anyone at C-level, one of their biggest concerns is customers' data being hacked and compromised, because it is such a. I mean, I've not seen any analysis around the hit that it has on revenue for organisations. It'd be great to see someone produce that, but it seems to be the biggest fear, because it not only does it cause huge bad publicity, it just really knocks the confidence of consumers that this organisation is not keeping our data secure. Why do I want to work with them, particularly if your credit card's compromised? Now, I know this because I've had my credit card compromised 3 times, and I know the organisation, and I won't say it for the sake of the camera, but the organisation where it was compromised on, and it does cause concern, because there was charges on my credit card then because someone got hold of that data via that company. You have to then go through the whole process of, you know, confirming that you haven't spent that, you fill forms out, you get your credit card sent through, and it does make you just go, I don't want to deal with that organisation anymore. So I think every organisation is going to be impacted by this, and the more you see public sector, financial services, and everyone becoming more sovereign, so to speak, they're going down that pathway, I can see the other organisations and industries trying to catch up, because I do believe, we talked about the business benefits, I think it's going to become a bit of a competitive advantage for some sectors if they can demonstrate more trust in where we hold your data, how we keep it secure.
I think the other aspect that comes back from COVID is that there are some things that are contextually sensitive as CNI, right? A simple example would be your shopping website. 9 times out of 10, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Lidl online website presence is not regarded as CNI. It's important for them as a business, but it's not regarded as CNI. In the middle of COVID, or the start of COVID, they actually kind of were, because it was the way people got food. And so that kind of contextual shift needs to be adapted into the way we think about those systems as well, which is we think of these things as CNI core, and then these things are CNI under these circumstances. I mean, they might be CNI all the time in the real world, but actually we only really think about them as CNI when we're under stress or under positions that are more difficult. And so having that as a context switch is going to be more challenging going forward. Because we had this set of controls that look like this, and now we have the set of controls that look like this, and now we don't need them anymore. And so you end up with that kind of ebb and flow that starts to become can be quite dynamic.
Interesting.